يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا هلا يا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with me, Julie Ali. On the show today, we're going to be looking at health mentoring. What is it all about? Does it work and will it work for you? We're also looking at what you need in terms of criteria to become a successful public relations officer. But first up, let's look at people that are marginalized, people that have disabilities. We often are told that there are just X amount of opportunities for them, and obviously that will also mean in certain cases that their future prospects would be very limited or possibly none at all. Along comes a man by the name of Shaun Soko. He is the executive director of a company called Life Change Developments, and he, together with his two partners, are trying hard to make a difference in the lives of people with disabilities. Let's get talking to Shaun Soko. Morning, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julie, and thank you for having me here.
Great to have you here because you're talking about something very close to my heart. We often talk about the disenfranchised, the marginalized, the poorest of the poor. And if people with disabilities are not given opportunities, that's where they're going to land up, a life of absolutely no hope.
Most definitely. When you look at people with disabilities, there's one thing that we all need to agree on, that they need our support in order for them to get from one point to the next point. But generally speaking, you'll find that living our busy day lives, it is hard to offer support to such. At times you're just focusing on yourself, and then you offer little support to the disabled. And many a times also it's caused due to ignorance. You don't really know how to assist them or to help them. And so as Lee Change Developments, we decided to look into this issue and try and offer our support in all areas and on the aspects that we actually know how. For instance, our center trains them on computer skills. Now, this is something that we were qualified and experts in. It was our field of study. So when we realized that in today's technological world, IT is now the everyday thing. If you want to look for a job, or if you want to do your shopping, or you want to pay your bills, IT then plays a pivotal role in such. So we say that, look, let us start with IT training. We give them the kind of a knowledge, and then everything else will then fall into place from that.
We sincerely hope so. And in this world of technology, we know where technology is going to. It's going into robotics, it's going to artificial intelligence. And if you don't jump on board now, you're going to be left behind on the platform. So very commendable on you. And I also understand you have two partners in business with you, and they both suffer from disabilities, right? So let's understand, who is Shaun Soko? Why did you decide, you come from a very strong IT background. You could be very comfortably employed in a large corporate in the IT sector. You have lots to offer. Why have you gone the NPO route?
Going the NPO route, unfortunately enough, when I started off in my career in life, I was employed as a facilitator lecturer, and then I dealt with mostly people with disabilities. So these became my friends.
How did that happen? How come you were lecturing to disabled people?
It wasn't like a choice that I made. I just saw the advert and then I applied, and only to find out that I was supposed to lecture disabled people. So that was the only choice given to me.
How did you react when you found out that you've been, and when we talk disabilities, we know we're talking a very wide range of disabilities. Yes. Some people are more capable or more able than other people. So that must have been a huge challenge for you.
It was a huge challenge. I remember going back home from the interview and I was told that, no, you're going to be lecturing disabled people. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? Like every other individual who's never been exposed to persons with disabilities, look, you don't really know and you just don't care. But now in this case, I had to now put my mind to it and say, okay, fine, these are disabled people, and then I needed to study and get to understand the disabled people. I needed to also understand, do these guys do have strengths to be able to do this? Because I was also one person who thought that they won't be able to do it. So I had to sit down, I had to talk to them, I had to find out, because now at the end of the day it was a job that I was doing, and I was expected to get these guys to a level whereby they're good, they understand computers. So now I needed to conduct research, and then I had to first identify their weaknesses and try and convert their weaknesses and pull out strengths for them so that I can get also a good result at the end of the term. So it was shocking. I was told that you're going to be dealing with people that take medication in order for them to remain stable. So there might be moments in time when maybe you're going to have to face off with them, or maybe they can be able to beat you up.
Ooh.
It was scary for me, honestly. So, but then as days went on, the beauty about it is that when I started off with those that had mild disabilities, not severe disabilities. So it wormed me into it. And then after spending time with them, I then realized that there's a different side that we all don't know as able-bodied individuals. I realized the strengths that that they had, and also I became friends with them. So now, because my circle now had people with disabilities, I had no choice. Most of my time I was spending with them. So all the other friends that I had, they had to fall away. And then I started appreciating the disabled. And also not even seeing the disability at the end of the day. I ended up seeing the strength in them. Like you did mention, my partners, one is blind and the other one has got scoliosis.
Were they part of the people that you were lecturing to?
Yes.
Is that where you sourced them from?
Yes, that's where I sourced them from. So I realized that they are so intelligent. One who's blind, he just told me and said, look, God might have took away my sight, but it didn't take away my mind, my brains, and my skill and all that, and my drive. So as we spend time, I got to see him as an able individual, to the point that when we're walking down the streets, at times I walk holding him, and at times I let go of his hand and I say, let's go, and forget that he's blind. Not that it's something that I'm doing it maybe to mock him, but it's actually, to me, I don't see his blindness anymore. I see his ability. And because I see his ability, then I can say, okay, fine, do this for me, do that for me. And then later I discover that, no, he does have a disability and he doesn't have sight. So I saw the strength in them. And then by seeing that strength, then I realized that a lot could be done if we focus on the strength.
So how long did you spend in this environment? Because I know your second partner suffers from scoliosis, and we know that's the curvature of the spine,
Yes.
Which can be very debilitating as well.
Yes.
And I guess there's no one disability that's possibly worse or better than the other, depending on your perspective, obviously.
Yes.
How long did you spend in this environment, and when did you decide it's time for me to move on and make an even greater impact in the lives of disabled people?
It was in 2008 that I started working with them. And then in 2011, that's when I decided that, look, I know there's challenges mostly in the townships, because the guys that I was lecturing, they were in a position to be able to travel from point A to point B. But then also understanding that there's severe disabilities and people that will not be able to come into the center. So I said, look, let us go into the townships and then source these people. And then you'll find that they were not in the center, not because they didn't want to, but because of a lot of stereotypes. The families at times, they keep them indoors, ashamed of exposing the disability outside. And so 2011, we started up setting up part-time classes in the township. And so as we continued, the numbers tended up to grow. So you'll find that they were comfortable being able to be trained at an institution that is within their area of residence. So instead of them traveling from point A to point B, from one city to another, it became so easy for them to just cross the road and actually come to the center that was. So this is when we decided and said, look, the numbers are growing. Let us then do this on a full-time basis. But then bearing in mind that there wasn't any funding available, and at the time I was full-time employed, and so I had to save up. And also even the savings were not even enough. So there was times that we'd offer it maybe once a week, we'd offer it maybe once in 2 weeks. But then in 2015, that's when we decided that, look, let us rather register an NPO. An NPO which is actually recognized, which will have a bank account and seek funds for us to be able to outroll this thing full time. So in January 2016, that's when we opened up our doors on a full-time basis. And we started off with a branch in Soweto, Dobsonville, with only 7 learners. And the number within 3 months, it grew up to as far as 40 learners.
Wow.
That was in Dobsonville. And then we saw the need to expand and said, look, let's go to Kagiso, because we had learners coming from Kagiso that will travel. And that number also as well, today we're sitting with, in Kagiso we've got 25 learners, and then in Dobsonville we've got 30 learners that attend on a day-to-day basis.
And still not nearly enough to cover the amount of people with disabilities throughout the country, but more about that after the ad break. Shaun Soko is our guest. He's talking about the 2 places of learning he has set up here in Johannesburg. The one is in Kagiso, the one is in Soweto, and it is to enable disabled people a skill, to upskill them and possibly make them employable so that they're able to become independent and obviously very productive people of the country and the economy. Still to come on the show, we're going to talk health mentoring, and we're also going to talk about what it takes to become a successful public relations officer. We're talking to Shaun Soko. He has headed up a company, started up in 2015, and it's called Lead Change Developments. It's a training center for people with disabilities. Shaun, you've indicated that you've got a fair number of people at both centers. Let's look at the level of their disabilities, and of course, because each one is different, I should imagine it's a huge challenge for you guys. You're never on the same page on any given day with all of the learners. How do you circumvent that situation?
Most definitely, hey, we have got different types. We've got the severely intellectually impaired, the mild intellectually impaired, we've got schizophrenic, we've got epileptic. So there's a lot happening in the classroom setup. And also the method that is used is not going to speak to each one of them. So in this case, for us to be able to successfully do that, then we tend to group them according to their level of understanding, first of all. So whether you're intellectually impaired, blind, but then you'll have a certain level of understanding, which then will actually put you in a specific group. And then we develop material as per your disability. If you are blind, then which means your material has to be uploaded onto the system so that you can be able to use screen reader software to read your material. If you're intellectually impaired, now in this case we have to put you in a sort of like a group team, because now we realize that theoretically it becomes a challenge for the intellectually impaired to understand. So then we put them in a group setup, and then their work, their tasks in practical work, and we have them do presentations and talk to one another and so forth.
So how long does your typical courses last for, and what is it exactly that you offer?
Okay, we've got a Microsoft Office, which is your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and we've got Microsoft Technology Associate, which is your technical courses. Now in Microsoft Office, you've got the Microsoft qualification itself, which is certified through the Certiport Exam Test Center. And then we've got ICDL, International Computer Driving License. So it depends on the level of understanding. Microsoft Office Specialist is of a higher standard, and it requires an individual to have like 80% knowledge of the product. And then we've got ICDL, which has got the beginner level, the intermediate level, and the advanced level. So also depending now on the level of understanding, then we then place them as per which Microsoft Office products will work for the individuals.
And how long does it take? Now, I'm assuming an able-bodied person might be in a course like this for 6 months or a year, and they qualify and they're able to enter the workplace. With the different levels of disabilities at your learning centers, what is the term that they're meant to spend at the college?
The minimum number of months is 3 months. So within 3 months, we expect a learner to be able to sit and write for, say, one exam, let's say Microsoft Word. And then the next 3 months again, they'll write the second program. But also, bearing on the level of understanding, some are quite intelligent. They can be able to do the whole full course. Say, for instance, International Computer Driving License, which is the base modules. That's 4 courses there. So they'll be able to do them maybe within the first 3 months.
And expectations, once they've qualified, do you assist them in finding employment? If they don't find employment, what do they do with the skills that they've learned at your college?
True, it's our exit strategy, and we're always talking about it all the time. So we're saying that the companies that do sponsor us, if they do sponsor us, we give them an opportunity to come also and hire the learners that they have sponsored. So we open that for them, and then also we have got partners. We have recently partnered with Grow Partners, which is a recruitment company that will then be able assisting us with placing such learners in different places of employment. But then we also got learnerships, and learnerships, this is where now our success, where we have most success stories. We've got a number of learnerships. Most companies, they're looking for disabled individuals for such learnerships, so we place them also in learnerships. But ultimately, if they do not get employment, what happens is we encourage them to start their own income generating projects. Like for instance, in the townships where we are, for you to type a CV, it's going to cost you 10 Rand a page. And the majority of people they've got around about 3-page CVs. So we say, you have got the skill, why don't you, at the comfort of your home, buy yourself a computer and a printer, and then advertise and say CV typing. If you type one CV a day, that's 30 Rand.
Where do they get the money for a computer and a printer? Are there facilities in place to enable them to get a soft loan, perhaps, to set up? Are you assisting them in that regard? How does that all work? Because obviously, I mean, the great thing is that you've offered them an opportunity to upskill themselves. But with that opportunity comes an expectation.
It comes an expectation as well. So recently we had a meeting with Gauteng Enterprise Propeller. So we were hoping that we can actually get them to assist our learners to get loans, or to give them business experience and expose them to the business dealings and so forth that will assist them in setting up such businesses. We also had talks with NYDA. But these are talks that are still in the pipeline. But then as they change, we say we get sponsors of equipment. And then the equipment that we have, if we identify a group of individuals, then we'll take it upon the organization itself to say, okay, fine, we'll provide you with the computer, we'll provide you with the printer, and we'll provide you with assistance in starting up that business at the end of the day.
I see as part of what you offer in terms of upskilling these learners, there's also awareness counselling, healthy lifestyle, sport development, etc. How does that come into play? How much time do they spend there? Do you have experts that come in to impart all of these skills to them? And how does that, I guess the whole idea is to have a well-rounded individual to go out into the big bad world.
Most definitely. Unfortunately, we don't have as many experts that do come, but in our space, we realize that we can offer awareness. We can offer counseling from one another. We sit down and we speak to each other. Let me focus on the area of awareness. With awareness, there's awareness for the employment side, whereby you make the employer aware. You also make the employees, that is the colleagues that will be working with the disabled individual, aware. You make the community aware, and you also make the family also as well aware. So
aware of the individual's needs, hopes, aspirations, dreams, and assist him to possibly get as close to those dreams as he possibly can.
Exactly. So that is our focus. So you find that employers, they are reluctant to employ a disabled individual because they don't understand the individual's strengths. For instance, if you take visually impaired, that is a blind individual, the employers will come and say the software is expensive, but then we have to make the employer aware that no, there's certain avenues also as well that you can follow. Instead of focusing on one expensive software, there's another software that you can get which is for free. And also they'll be worried and say, but who's going to supervise and monitor? This is where comes in the mobility training, which we also offer to the guys, and say, look, when you are employed, if you have to go to the toilet, or maybe if you have to go have some lunch, then there's going to be like a training that is going to take place within the facility where the person will be employed, and that's only going to be for a day. And also as well, the supervision part of it. If you give a blind individual a computer, we should make sure that by him receiving the computer, he can be able to set it up if he's stuck along the computer, he should be able to what? To find his way around it.
Do you have after support services for these people?
Yes, we offer after support because we've realized that there is a great need, because you place a visually impaired individual in a company and then they are stuck. The software doesn't work. It has been corrupted by a virus. So now it has to come back to us and say, okay, fine, we are willing to be able to what? To come and help.
And I should imagine your doors open for counselling and advice and so forth as well.
Most
You have
definitely.
2 centres running, good on you, and I do hope many more will be opened all around the country. But for people watching us this morning, have a loved one that needs this type of, hand up, so to speak, the assistance to become as independent as they possibly can. Let's assume they live in the suburbs and they can't come to you in Soweto or Kagiso. Are there other such centres around the country? Who can they go to? Or people living in the areas we've mentioned, how do they then come to you, and what would the criteria be for them to qualify to join your college?
Okay, those living in areas that you've just mentioned, like for instance the suburbs, you cannot come to the townships. The reason why we started off in the townships is because we realized that those are disadvantaged areas. But then our dream and our objective is to have a center in every community or in every suburb where there is a need. So for us to be able to open up such centers, then we're going to need also the support, also especially from the business community, whereby we can get equipment. So for instance, if we say we identify a group of individuals within a suburb, let's say it's one suburb, then we need to have at least maybe a minimum of 20. And then if we have a minimum of 20 individuals, then it becomes a place where we can actually go and open up a center. But in our case now, thank God for IT, because we were able to train someone who was in Cape Town and we were in Joburg. So what we do is now they make contact with us and then we request the required documents. And then what we do is now, unfortunately, that individual needs to have at least a little knowledge of IT, because we're going to be communicating via email, where we make use, we make available the material and also the course content. And unfortunately for the exam, he or she will have to come through to our center to write the exam. So in such a case where they cannot travel to Dobsonville or to Kagiso, then they can just simply make contact with us and then we can set such an arrangement.
Okay, we have a minute and a half to wrap up time. Let's understand, apart from having basic computer skills, what are the criteria should be in place for the person to qualify to enter your college, and what are the costs involved to them to, get this awareness, education and upskilling?
The criteria, they need to have a South African ID, and also they need to have proof that they are disabled. They also need to provide us with their school report, which indicates their level of understanding. They should be able to read and understand the English language. So these are the primary criteria that we require from them, including the computer skills knowledge. And the costs, we offer such a service for free to the disabled community. And for us to be able to do that, then we seek out funding and sponsorships and donations.
Why do you do it? What's in it for you? I mean, people, I'm sure, obviously ask you the question.
They do ask me, hey, it fulfills me. At the end of the day, I'll want to be counted amongst the Mandelas. I want to be the one person who brought about change in a society at a given time. It's just the recognition, it's just the fulfillment of doing what is good. Because at the end of the day, I've just realized that people go to work and they're not satisfied with what they do because the salary doesn't bring about satisfaction. But I realize that the satisfaction is doing something that you have been called to do. Whether you're paid for it or whether you're not paid for it, you'll be able to do it at the end of the day.
Shaun, thank you indeed. You certainly are a man with a very big heart, and you certainly are touching lives in a very, very positive way. We pray for your ongoing success in opening such centres all through the country. That was Shaun Soko talking to us about how he's touching lives of the disabled in a very positive way. For now, they're very few, about 50 or so, but his long-term vision is to cover as many lives, disabled people of course, and give them a shot or a chance at leading a normal life as possible. Still to come, we're going to be looking at health mentoring and also what it takes to become a successful public relations officer. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. And I have the lovely Professor Celine Bernstein in studio with me. She is mad about health. She's into integrative medicine. She's written a book. Oh my goodness, what has this woman not achieved up until now? I think she's an exemplary role model, and she's here to talk about her life. She's here to talk about health, wellness, fitness, and healthy eating. So stay with us. Celine, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Julie. Lovely to be with you.
I'm so pleased you're here because you have such positive energy and you have such a zest for life.
I am a zest for life. I mean, that's what life is about. We've got to wake up in the morning, thank God that we can open our eyes, walk, and then face the day. And whatever challenges we might get, we will overcome them with our faith and determination.
Absolutely. Very well said. And let's look at you as a health mentor. I also know you've written a book. I also know that various professors have amazing things to say about you. So when and how did this journey start for you? And we'll also talk about your thesis, which I think is very interesting as well. So let's start right at the beginning.
Well, I started off teaching mentally challenged children.
Ooh.
And I saw the anguish in the moms' faces. And often they would come to me and say, what to do? I can't take this. My husband's not interested. He's having an affair. So I gave them kind of permission to say, let's institutionalize the child. The child will always be loved. But to make your life easier, to cope better and not feel guilty, let's put the child in a special home. And I carried on teaching these children, and I thought, let me change their eating pattern. And when they went home for the holidays, at the end of the holidays, when the moms brought the children back to the home, it was at the hamlet.
So were you at the home, working full-time at the home as
I was
a teacher?
working normal hours,
Okay.
teaching hours.
But at the hamlet?
Home, at the hamlet. Mm-hmm. And I brought out the best in these children. I actually taught them, I actually approached them as if they were normal. If they would draw a picture of a man and their hands were on their head, there were a lot of Afrikaans children. So I said, "Waar vandaan kom die arms?" And I said, "Nie van die kop af, van die skouers." And they laughed. And when they repeated it, a lot of them remembered to put it off the shoulders. And I remember Professor Creel, who taught at, I've forgotten the school, this is many, many years ago, he said to me, your children are unbelievable, how they emulate you. I would look at them and they would know, can't do that. Celine's going to be very upset. So I really brought out the best. But when the mothers brought the children back from the holidays, the comment was, you can't believe how they got on with the siblings.
Are you still teaching?
No, but after the hamlet, I went into the government schools and I taught grade 4. I think that's standard 2.
A regular school.
Yeah, regular school. And I started implementing the same ideas regarding food, and I called the parents in and I told them what I did with the mentally challenged, and I said, would you be prepared to sort of follow the rules? And at break, the children would spend like 10 minutes with me. We would eat the food that the parents prepared, and then they would go and play with their mates. And I really got results. I got the children off Ritalin. Their whole demeanor was different. They were happy children. You know, it's no good fighting with the child. There's always a reason why the child behaves the way they do. We don't know what goes on in the home. Parents can be having fights, etc., and the children don't know how to handle it. They feel that they're to blame for it.
And they start comfort eating all the junk.
Absolutely. And then it goes on further to their teenage years.
That being said, obviously there's a huge emphasis on the type of food we're feeding ourselves and our families.
That's very important.
And I'm also picking up from you that obviously all the preservatives, the colorants, and sugar being the very big culprit is also playing havoc in all of our lives. You've talked about Ritalin, and that also suggests that we're talking possibly children with ADHD. How long were you involved in this type of work?
Well,
and when and why did you move on?
Okay, why did I move on? Because I had reached a point with a mentally challenged child, and I felt, now let me take the normal child and bring out the best in them.
Let's go back a few steps. Why did you make the choice initially to work with mentally challenged children?
Okay, I have a BA degree in remedial teaching.
Ah, okay.
And I thought to myself, let me see the benefit that I can give to these children with my gentleness, my encouragement, and understanding.
And your enthusiasm.
Absolutely, it was enthusiastic. And that gave me a lot of insight into the normal child. If not for teaching mentally challenged, I don't think I would have been so equipped to handle the normal child in the school. I now and again see a lot of ADD, ADH children. And you know, Julie, we as integrative health and wellness practitioners looking at functional medicine, you don't look at the symptom. You look at the total child. What is it that you're unhappy about? Do you like school? How's your teacher? Who are your friends? Have you got friends? Do you enjoy waking up in the morning being ready to go to school? And you find from them that a lot of children bully them, or the teacher's very harsh towards them. Teachers have not got patience. They'd rather have children on Ritalin so that it would create a calming effect in the atmosphere of their teaching. And I think that's wrong in a way, because Ritalin does come with side effects. And I'll never forget a story. A child didn't finish his exam paper. And I called him aside and I said, why didn't you finish? You know the answers. He said, I didn't have any paper more. I said, why didn't you put up your hand? So I said, you know what? You're going to, not a punishment, you're going to stay in at break because I know you know the answers. I'm going to give you the extra paper. And as soon as you've finished answering, go out and play with your mates. He did that, and he did very, very well. So you've really got to understand.
And affirm the child.
Yes.
Because I think in this day and age, in this instant gratification, in this instant age we're living in, parents, adults, teachers don't seem to have the time to invest in that child or in those children that are under their care.
So
and
true.
because of that, we're having a lot of wayward children. We're having probably end up having a lost generation of children.
Absolutely. And I want to tell you, the frightening thing is, and the research that I've done, is that the children of today might not outlive the parents.
Oh.
That is frightening. And you know, people say, oh, my children eat so badly, etc. They're into the junk. The first question I ask, how do you eat as parents?
Absolutely. It's the way we role model our children,
absolutely.
don't we? So then to go on, when did you decide to leave the schooling environment? Because I'm sure you really made an impact on those children's lives.
Thank you, I did, and they still actually relate with me, talk to me,
Have
send me
contact with
messages.
you. Wow.
I think I needed to get certification, a diploma, whatever it was. And I started studying health and nutritional science through the institute, the Life Institute in Austin, Texas. And they subsequently moved to Canada. And I became the teacher here of the life science course from Texas. And I sent the answers over. Students that I had, I sent the answers over to America. So there are a lot of students that I had at that time. And then I went on radio, and one day while I was on radio, as I got out, fortune teller, I don't know what you call him, said to me, you know what, Celine, my suggestion is write a book. People need your information. And the reason why I wrote the book was that there are a lot of people that could not come and see me. And I wrote it in a way that people felt that I was actually talking to them and relating to them and understanding them. Look, the book is old. It was published in 1997. In 2007, I wrote extra information. I'm a great follower of Patrick Holford. He is Zest for Life. And I added some extra information. And one day at Patrick Holford's conference, I went up to him and I said, Patrick, you've got to bring Zest for Life to South Africa. He said, I will, but you've got to find me 4 nutritionists. By the way, we're not allowed to use the word nutrition today. That's the new rule in
So
the
what do you
healthcare.
use in place of nutrition?
Well, a wellness practitioner.
Wellness.
That's why I call myself an integrative health and wellness practitioner.
On that point, let's take our ad break. We'll be back with you in a minute or two. The amazing Professor Celine Bernstein talking to us about health, well-being, wellness, her life, how she's touched lives, how she's going on to change people's perspectives on the way they eat and they live, and possibly also play. So stay with us. And welcome back. I have Professor Celine Bernstein in studio with me. She is a health and fitness mentor. We're going to talk more about that in a minute or two. Actually, I don't think we're going to have enough time with her. She just has so much of information and advice to give us, but let's see how we go. You've just told me off air now that, you know, despite all of your knowledge that you have as far as healthy eating and healthy living is concerned, sadly you have a daughter suffering from multiple sclerosis. Is that the reason why you've chosen this path?
No, because I was doing that before
Aha.
she was diagnosed.
Okay.
I have a friend, a very religious friend, that actually said to me, you've got to regard your daughter's illness as a gift, otherwise you would not have pursued your knowledge. And my radical approach to eating, believe it or not, is basically to stay well, healthy and fit, that I can support my daughter in the years to come.
She is in a wheelchair as we speak. How has your approach helped her lead a fuller life, for example, or perhaps maybe not allow the disease to progress perhaps as rapidly it might have?
Well, thank goodness through all my research and my connections, we did genetic testing. I did it as well. The grandchildren, who are now 23 and 20, a boy and a girl, they also asked for the test. I think that by giving Tracy the right supplements and the support of the geneticist, etc., she hasn't retrogressed. She's remained, although she's in her scooter, goes everywhere with it. I have to keep up with her when we go shopping. She's got a very good attitude towards life. In fact, when clients call me and they complain of a headache, she says, that's nothing, tell them I can't walk and I'm coping.
Dear me.
She's amazing.
Walk a mile in my shoes and then you'll know.
Absolutely.
All right. You were awarded a professorship in an honorary capacity by the Life Science Institute on the thesis that you wrote, and obviously it's something that you're very passionate about, and that is food. How the body acts on the food we eat.
We're all different.
Right.
So no one diet is specific for a person. It's got to be a specific kind of way. You know, you've got to go into their likes and dislikes. And what I've learned through functional medicine is that if you don't know where the symptom's coming from, don't treat the symptom, look at the gut. Our gut, our digestive system is so important. And unfortunately, the medical doctors, they're now learning a lot more about nutrition, and many of them are turning to functional medicine, have realized that you can't just put a band-aid over the symptom. You've got to get to the real cause of it, and most of it comes from the gut. Your gut is your second brain, your second immune system. So if you keep getting sick, you can't just keep on taking antibiotics. Of course, they'll wipe out the good flora in your gut. You need to heal the gut first.
I've had a couple of guests in studio recently talking about a healthy gut and how to keep it healthy, and they talk about a whole host of issues around alkalinity and to try and cut out the acid-forming foods and substances in your body. But we can leave that off for another time. What's the book on Health Seekers all about? Is that your second book?
No, it's just added information. I've got to be honest, it's an old book. I think I was ahead of my time because people are now following it. Sugar is a no-no. Sugar makes you fat. Sugar lowers the immune system, and sugar feeds cancer.
Absolutely.
So it's not the fat that is causing the problems. Of course, we must avoid low fat, because low fat is high in sugar. They've got to find a substitute for taking away the fat. And sugar plays a role. We're seeing a lot of people with diabetes, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, young girls with polycystic ovaries, endometriosis. So I feel if you change the eating pattern, but you don't have to do it dramatically and radically.
Gradually.
Start slowly.
Let me ask you this, Professor Celine. As a health coach, if I came to you, how long will we be working together? And what would be the starting point in getting me to eat correctly and to get me onto the road of health and well-being?
I love that question. Look, you must have looked and seen that I've got this NutriQ questionnaire, which I offer free. It's a nutritional assessment questionnaire, which asks you about 300 questions. And then you submit it, and then the reports come back to me. And it deals with 16 organ systems. So I encourage you to do that, which is free. The report comes back, and I will send you the system burden graph to look at, which I've explained. But I haven't sent you all the reports. And then I do offer you a special price to spend 2 hours with me. And I'll send you an initial questionnaire, and I want to find out about you, your eating pattern. Why do you eat like this? Are you always rushed? Is it during your working stage that you'd have no time to eat? Because people think by cutting out food and drinking coffee all day, they'll lose weight. That is not the way to go. It'll upset your sugar levels, etc. So you'll fill in that initial questionnaire, and then you'll come to me. And then I'll go through the questionnaire, and then I'll start a sort of a coaching approach. Why did you want to take that? People often come to me as a last resort. They've been here, there, but they're still not well. The missing link is actually the coaching, because I've found that the weight loss and health loss industry are not providing a solution to permanent weight loss and commitment to healthy nutritional principles.
What is your take as a health coach and mentor? What is your take on supplements, vitamin and mineral supplements?
Lovely question. You can't take vitamins, supplements, minerals, etc., and eat badly. And also...
That's what we do, don't we?
People think that's support. Well, doesn't matter, I'll take these supplements and I'll be fine. First of all, how's your gut? What's it doing? Is it absorbing the nutrients, or is it passing out as expensive urine? So before I even give supplements, I start asking valid questions. What has held you back? Why do you keep running from dietitian to dietitian? Nah, I've done it, it works, I lost the weight. I said, but you're back again. I've put on more weight.
Is yo-yo dieting bad for your system?
Very bad.
Why?
Because the body is very intelligent. It says, hang on, she did a bit of yo-yo dieting, she lost the weight, now she's doing a bit of binging. I have to support the body. I will hold on to that food. I do believe in intermittent fasting. I think that's a very good way to lessen the amount of food you're taking in.
What is your concept of intermittent fasting? I'm thinking one day on, one day off, but you might think differently about it.
Well, what do you understand by one day on and one day off?
One day, probably, minimize all the junk or just minimize the food intake and probably eat as the little that you do, as healthy as possible. Fruits and veggies in the, rawest of forms. And then maybe the next day eat regularly. That's my thinking.
And what is regularly?
3 meals, cooked meals, meat, veggies, and whatever else, a bit of sugar, a bit of chocolate, a bit of cake.
Okay, now that's what I realized happened with Ramadan. They would have their sahur in the early morning.
The breakfast, yes.
And they would have their breakfast very early.
Yeah,
and
which
not
is called the
eat it.
sahur, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and then they'd go on till iftar.
That's right.
And then they'd break it with the dates, etc., and then they'd go mad.
Right.
Now, I don't believe that way. You're undoing the good that you're doing. So just getting back to intermittent fasting, basically you eat in sort of a 12-hour, 16-hour, an 8-hour window. So you would wake up in the morning. I'd approach you. Julie.
Okay, I'm going to rush you now because we've got 2 minutes to wrap up time.
Julie, when do you feel most hungry?
Mid-morning.
Okay, then mid-morning about 10. So don't eat breakfast, don't have anything, drink water or have a collagen powdered drink, and then at 10 o'clock have your breakfast, a healthy breakfast. And then maybe at 3 o'clock eat your lunch, normal lunch, healthy, and at 7 o'clock have your supper. And you've got to now wait 16 hours after completing the supper to eat your breakfast again.
At 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to have to leave it. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Give us your website address for people who'd like to obviously get in touch with you for possibly health coaching.
Absolutely. It's www.thehealthmentor.co.za.
It was an absolute delight talking to you. I'm going to start thinking and looking at food differently. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Julie. Lovely talking to you.
My pleasure. That was Dr. Professor
No doctor.
Pardon, Professor Celine Bernstein talking to us about healthy eating, healthy lifestyles. And of course, the very strong message she's given us is cut out the sugar. Still to come on the show, we're going to be looking at PROs. What is their role in your life? And can we do that again? From the time I say goodbye to Professor, this happens to me all the time.
No, I also get tongue-tied. I don't know.
No, but when it's live, it's on a roll.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. You can clap me later.
You're too lovely to be clapped. What a pleasure talking to you.
What a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your kind
Pleasure.
words. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are we ready to? Yes, I am. From where must I take it? Sorry? Okay. I'm going to thank you again and I'm going to say goodbye. It's time for us to wrap up. Sadly, so much more to cover, but hopefully we'll get you on another time. Thank you indeed, and thank you for all the information,
It
all
was
the
an
valuable
absolute,
information.
It really was an absolute pleasure, Julie. Thank you.
The pleasure was all mine, I promise you. Professor Celine Bernstein talking to us about healthy eating, and of course, the strong message from her is healthy guts and cutting out of all the sugar and preservatives, also obviously the food colorants, and we definitely have to get her back in again. Still to come, we're going to look at how you become a successful public relations officer. And our final interview for the day is with the lovely Helen Holyoake. She is a public relations consultant, and she's here to talk about perhaps a day in the life of a PRO. You know, back in the day when I was in the corporate world, I always regarded public relations officers as these very glamorous creatures doing very glamorous work. I'm not sure she's going to agree with me. Let's check her thoughts. She has been in this industry for over 24 years. Helen, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Julie. It's lovely to be here with you today.
I must say you look very glamorous.
Oh, thank you.
So I think I'm not wrong in having suggested in my introduction that, you know, public relations people are really these glamorous creatures immersed in a very glamorous world.
You know, we have to dress up from time to time because we are in the public eye. We meet important people. We deal with the press. So there are days where we are, you know, we let out of our little offices and
put your best foot forward.
Yes, exactly.
Because it has this glitz and glamour around it, lots of young people would be attracted to public relations as a career, but you just don't step into it magically and start carving a niche for yourself. What sort of qualifications or what field of study would make you the right candidate for a position like this?
Well, I suppose anyone that has, I mean, you can go and study journalism, so that will give you the ability to be able to write and communicate, because that's what PR is about. I think most of it, 90% of it, is about communication, about effective communication. And probably quite a bit of sales put into it as well, because remember, you're putting something across to the press, you're putting a story across to the press, and you've got to believe in it, because if you don't believe in it, how are you going to get the press to take on a story or to promote or to do an interview with somebody? So that, I think, is a very good start. But I didn't finish my degree. I went straight into publishing in the early 80s, and I was in corporate publishing in the marketing and sales field for nearly 15 or 16 years. So I mean, I did cut my teeth in the corporate world.
The reason you're here, obviously, is because you've sent us a lot of the authors that you promote, the books that you promote, and obviously these amazing people then walk into our studios and we get a glimpse into their lives and into their writing. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
But also, obviously, there is the grit and gore involved in this type of work as well. It's being able to suss out the right book, the right author, the right product. So it's so much bigger and complicated than what my perception of public relations is all about. And how important, whole host of questions to you, how important is it in this day of technology when every second person is chasing their 15 minutes of fame on social media platforms?
So just to go back to your earlier question, it is difficult. The market has changed over the last couple of decades. I think with the advancement of technology, we didn't see this instant gratification of publicity or self-publicity because authors never had social media platforms, and we had to wait for reviews and interviews to be published in print, or we would see it on TV and tape it with a a VHS. And that has all changed,
Right.
and everything is a lot more instant. But it also has its disadvantages in that it's very difficult to get, particularly in the publishing area, the book side of my business, is to get reviews, like good old-fashioned reviews in print, in newsprint. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and it's just the pages are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The staff compliments in the print media houses are getting smaller and smaller. They're doing more and more work. They're not just the book's editor. They do all kinds of roles within a newspaper. So it is very different, and it's very difficult. And just in terms of the life of a PRO, 90% of our time is spent behind a laptop, writing press releases, sending press releases out, communicating with the press, setting up interviews. And it is not all that glamorous. You have to be very dedicated, very efficient, and you've got to be like a taskmaster at communication to keep all those things together so that you don't drop any balls.
I've indicated that you've sent a couple of authors our way to obviously promote their books and
Yes.
to talk about the books and their lives, obviously what brought them to that particular juncture in their lives. But also, again, with the advancement of technology, you're also finding a lot of authors that are self-publishing. How does that impact? And I know that you work closely, your work is very varied, but you do promote a lot of authors as well.
I do. So I've got a very happy balance of traditionally published authors that I work with, and then I handpick independent authors, particularly when I believe in their stories and the message that they need to get across.
Does that mean you need to do a lot of reading to keep your finger on the pulse as far as new authors coming onto the market, new books being released?
I do a lot of reading. I don't read during business hours. It's all after business hours, but I love reading. And I've always read from a tiny child. That was my when I learned how to read, I thought I was just the cleverest person in the universe. So I've always been a very, very avid reader. So, and I think that's how I've landed up, in this career that I've built and loved, and I'm still extremely passionate about what I do. But when I'm off, I don't advertise my business at all. I mean, it's all word of mouth, and I have authors approaching me every day, maybe sometimes more than one a day.
Wow.
And
you've been in the business for about 24 years.
Yes, that's correct. So I do handpick. I used to have staff, a team of people that worked with me, but that was when I still had little children to look after, and now they've all grown up and are, students and in their 20s. So I found that I had more time on my hands to work more, and that's what I've been doing for the last few years, and I'm absolutely loving it. I can't imagine being, sort of going meeting for coffee and playing tennis, and I'm just not that kind of person. I need that mental stimulation, and I love people, so
Right.
I'm always meeting new people, and I'm learning about new things. I mean, I'm always learning every single day of my life.
And books are one way of getting there.
Exactly.
Again, let's get back to technology. I mean, gee whiz, you kind of wonder what was life like without technology. So, it comes at a price. It has eased up our lives in so many ways that you can't even begin to imagine, but it does come at a price as well. One of those being the issue around books. I'm wondering, I'm sure we touched on newspapers, etc.,
Yes.
how we consume our news these days. And I think technology has given a knock to papers, even though people are telling us, well, we consume our news via the internet. But as far as broadsheets, etc., is concerned, it's almost like they're going to be dying out sometime soon. I don't know. Is it the same with books?
No, because we've got a dual pleasure of choosing the medium in which we want to read our books. So the Kindle is growing. It's not as big in South Africa as it is in other countries around the world, but it is a growing market. I know so many of my friends only read on Kindle or electronically.
I need to look at the book, I need to touch the book, I need to smell the book, I need to feel I'm holding a book in my hand.
I feel exactly the same way, and I'm very proud to tell you that I do not own a Kindle. I only read in paper versions, and there's a big reason for it. I spend 90% of my time behind a laptop working using electronics in my business, that my eyes have been affected, and
Absolutely.
I like to lie down and read a book.
That's exactly what I do. And let's go for our first ad break. I'm talking to Helen Holyoake. She is a public relations practitioner. She's now running her own business, and I just thought we could take a glimpse in the world of a public relations officer. Is there still a place for them in the corporate world? We'll find out right after the ad break. And we're into the final segment of the show this morning. Helen Holyoake is my guest. She is a public relations practitioner. She sent many authors our way to talk about their amazing work. Helen, have you ever had situations where you thought you're onto a winner here with an author? And I know it's not only about promoting books, you promote events and everything else, and we're going to allow you to share that with us as well. But where you thought this is definitely a sure winner and it just bombs?
Oh yes, I mean sometimes you really, really believe in something and it just doesn't work. It doesn't manifest itself the way you believed it would. I think with time and experience, I don't make those decisions about predicting a bestseller any longer. I can't even predict winners of literary awards any longer. So
Right.
I'm quietly confident that the books that I choose to promote, I'm going to make a success of them within the press and get those sales up for the publishers and the authors.
Well, your previous author that was here last week spoke very highly of you. She said you had such amazing results. It was the best thing she could have done was to obviously partner with you. But in a situation where things don't go as planned or as expected, how do you deal with it, and how do you hold the author's hand through the process?
Well, we really do try. I mean, it's very hard because, and I think the biggest, when we're talking books, the biggest difficulty in genre is fiction, because we have a very limited number of fiction reviewers. And as I'm an independent, I'm competing with all the big publishers that bring in books from international markets. So, of course, the choice is always going to be something that's like very, very new and very sexy and very like up and coming. So sometimes the books that I work on get to the bottom of the pile. But I have a very unique way of working, and I have a unique way of bringing those books up to the top of the pile. And it's all about my relationships with the press. And I never send books if they're not interested in a topic or a genre. I almost just make them say to me, Helen, yes, I would like a review copy of this book. I don't just send piles of books out. And that's also has worked in my favor. So I'd rather send out fewer books, but I make sure that they get the notice that they need.
Is it difficult for you to tell an upcoming author or a first-time author that I'm sorry, your book is just not talking to me and I don't think it's going to talk to the general public out there?
Well, I never talk about the general public, but I do from my own perspective, will give them, and I would say, yes, this is just not for me. I think you need a different publicist, because, you know, we all have our values and our morals, and sometimes you are presented with something that you have real convictions about. And I know, I mean, I've been in that place where I've gone, this is not something that I can do. And I also have to be very careful about attaching my name to something, because I've got to be credible. My business has to be business has to be credible.
Obviously, you have to do lots of hard work to promote the author and the book. So let's look at this fine line between public relations and advertising.
Okay, so advertising is very easy if you've got budget, because you just say, I want a half a page advertisement or a quarter page, or you can buy advertorial space and you have a chance to do the design and put the copy together, and there you go, it goes into print. Whereas with editorial, it's not 100% guaranteed. So the bulk of my business is promoting books and authors. So it's, I have to send those books out and in good faith, look for a positive review. Now, because everybody has a difference of opinion in various topics, times it does happen when a journalist will come back to me and say, I really didn't like this book. I really didn't enjoy this book.
What do you do in a situation like that?
I just leave it. And the journalists are honest with me. They'll say to me, Helen, I didn't like this book and I'm not going to put a nasty review in print, so I'm not going to review it. And I just tell the author that book just didn't suit that journalist's personality. There's not going to be a review.
And obviously you need to have good relations with these journalists.
Absolutely.
And it's not about pushing a book or pushing your agenda. You both have to be very upfront and honest with each other.
Exactly. And when I take on new authors, or when we start our journey together in working to promote their books, and especially when it's a new author, I'm very honest with them. I'm very open with them. I always say reviews are not guaranteed, but we're going to work on the fact that I believe in your book and that I have a good relationship with the press. That will result in a positive outcome.
I've come across, in my line of work, a lot of new first-time authors, first-time authors, not sure if they're going to be upcoming, who have self-published. What's the difference between self-publishing? What does it cost them in time and money, as opposed to coming to someone like you, Helen Holyoake?
Okay, so I'm not a publisher, I'm a publicist.
Okay,
but
the difference being?
So I'm an independent, but there is two things. You are either traditionally published, where you submit your manuscript to a publisher.
A publishing house.
Yeah, to a publishing house. And most of their websites have guidelines for submission. So you go onto the different publishing house websites, you go onto the submissions page, and it tells you exactly what to do to submit a book. If the publisher then takes that book on, the publisher then runs with the financial risk. Okay. So the author gets a very small royalty, unless you're Wilbur Smith, or I think even Dion Mayer these days. They get very big advances. They're published internationally. So there are, in some cases, you will get an advance and then very, very small royalties. And you wait a long time for that money to come in. So whenever I work with authors, or we work with authors that have daytime jobs, we always tell them to keep their daytime jobs, because it takes a long time to be a full-time writer and actually earn an income out of it.
So if someone comes to you let's assume I come to you. Obviously, you will then take me on as a client, but where does the book then get published? Do I still self-publish, but help to get you to promote the book?
So yes, so then we've got, so that's the one side, the traditional, and now the independent publishing, which is growing at an alarming rate. People then, those authors, there are companies that you can go to that can help you get your book into a publishable format. So there are, and we work closely with some of those publishers where they will do all the editing, proofreading, design, layout, cover designs, back blurbs, apply for the ISBN, upload it as ebooks, but that author pays for that.
You've just answered my next question.
Yes. So the author then has to have some sort of a budget, because they're paying then to print books. Print on demand has helped, because now authors don't have to print the 20,000 copies that we did, what we used to do in corporate publishing in the 80s. We used to print enough books. We used to predict the print run, which had to sell out within 2 years of the book coming out. Nowadays, the advancement of print on demand has taken that pressure away. And then you're not having big warehouses warehousing tens of thousands of books.
For example, let's assume I self-publish and I have maybe, I should imagine there's a minimum and maximum number of books that you can print. So let's assume the minimum is 200 books, at a shot. What's that going to cost me?
Well, it all depends on the book, whether if it's one color cover, but one color inside, like a novel. There are no photographs. You can print that book sort of for a reasonable amount of money, I think, and it's not my area of expertise, but for about 50 Rand a book.
Okay.
So the rule of thumb is the bigger your print run, the print cost per book comes down. The smaller the print run, the higher it is per copy.
Okay, and with about a minute to wrap up, it's always time flies when you're having lots of fun.
It does, isn't it? Just like that.
What do you want to say to us in closing, to upcoming authors and people wanting to enter this space as a public relations person?
All I would say is that if you are writing, if authors are out there writing, believe in yourself, believe in your stories. Sometimes they're not always stories for the whole world to read, but just write them down, just write them down. And for publicists wanting to find a really, really exciting career, it has been a very, very exciting and a learning career for me. It's just been fantastic, and I'm very pleased that I didn't land going off the rails and doing something else.
And it's not all about the glitz and the glamour.
No,
there's a lot of hard work involved. Long hours, etc.
Exactly.
Helen, thank you indeed for being with us and giving us a peek into your world, and continue sending those amazing authors our way. It's lovely meeting with them, lovely reading their books, and lovely talking to them.
Thank you so much, Julie, for having me.
My pleasure entirely. And that's where we leave it for today. Thank you so much for your company. We do hope you're going to join us again next time. From the production team, the Let's Talk production team, as always, please be safe on the roads. And it is Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Ali.
يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا